we are ending out the year with all of our returning champions, all of the fan favorites. And today is no exception because returning to the show is the great David Roth. David, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, David, right at the jump at this episode, there's an issue that when I saw news reports breaking about it, my first thought was, I need Roth to write about this. And lo and behold, you did. And the story that I'm talking about is the curious case of drones over the great state of New Jersey. And you just wrote about it for Defector yesterday. And the headline here, it's time for a little recreational mental illness in New Jersey. And you begin with this great sentence. There's a kind of hush that is specific in old-growth suburbs, a quietness that is more vast and more inherent than any disturbance that kind of place can kick up. David, the phrase old-growth suburbs was just so perfect. But like, what is going on with drones over New Jersey, people seeing drones over New Jersey, and has the Iranian mothership landed?
So I should be clear about this that because I did get a little bit dinged for it on social media that like old growth suburbs, I think you kind of know what that term means. It's like a suburb that has like stores in a downtown area as opposed to one that is sort of warily circling a large big box store. Like that is a newer type of suburb to exist. But the sightings are mostly not happening in the part of New Jersey where I grew up, which is North Jersey. Not to say that like the drones haven't gotten there yet. I think there's just more light pollution from the city nearby. Yeah. But so much of the sightings have been in what I think is like the most deranged part of New Jersey, which is quite an honor. Like great, like Metro Wildwood, like the strange kind of conservative Philly Shore area. And that's in a lot of the Iranian mothership thing is being that has been led by Representative Jeff Van Drew, who I recommend anybody listening to this to look a picture of him up. Like he looks like someone who would get screamed at by John Taffer, like someone who runs a failing steakhouse called like Respectables, and Taffer's like, we gotta put TVs up in here.
Yeah,
shut it down. Like it's
you're making people sick.
Yeah,
like, Jeff Van Drew has the. He looks like he is the husband to a wife who cheats on him with an 8th grader. Like that type of genotype.
Yeah, the videos of him, he's gone on Fox and talked about how these are Iranian drones flying in from international waters. Then he got criticized for it. Then he went on YouTube and cut like a 2-camera promo, which also brought home the other aesthetic that he has to me, which is like, I don't know if they still have these anymore in wrestling, but when they used to have managers where there would just be like, some
like Paul Bearer
type, or whatever. I'm trying to think. There's like a guy that kind of looked like Richard Petty, but wasn't. Like just these like kind of like weaselly Tennessee type dudes that like they couldn't really wrestle, but they were really good at making like eager hand gestures while someone else was talking, and they were able to make a life doing that. So Jeff Van Drew right to camera being like, fear has no part in our governance. And now I would like to talk to you about the mothership. Like the accent is unreal.
And from very high sources, very qualified sources, very responsible sources, I'm going to tell you the real deal. Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones. That mothership is off, I'm going to tell you the deal. It's off the east coast of the United States of America. They've launched drones, is everything that we can see or hear. And again, these are from high sources. I don't say this lightly.
The delivery is great. Like he's a pig in shit.
I know. And speaking of other Jersey politicians, I did see Congressman Chris Smith. This is a headline here. Congressman Chris Smith wants to give local cops the authority to shoot at planes if they think they might be drones that just look like planes.
I think that's...
Look, folks, if you see lights in the sky at night, and you're concerned that it might be a drone, but could possibly be a plane, just start shooting at it.
Yeah, you have no duty to retreat from an airplane. If you're in fear of your life, light them up.
How do they think, like, anti-air works in 2024? Like, if you could just shoot, like, a 9mm at any plane and bring it down, I mean, why would anyone have surface air missiles? If you could just get, like, a patrolman who can't run under a 12-minute mile to just aim his Beretta at the sky and take down a plane. I mean, I love all of this. I love the idea that Iran, who their currency depreciates by half like every year, that somehow they're the only country that like gets to live in ace combat. Like they have a parasite drone mothership that can cross fucking multiple oceans without anyone noticing. And then it can release like these would be like 7th generation drones that can do like Colbits and all this crazy shit. And like if they could do that, like Kamini would not be making speeches where he's telling people to vote.
Yeah, like, yeah. I think that's the part of it that's kind of because a lot of this. I mean, I feel like we're kind of going to try to do like 1986 to 1990 again as a country. I think that's like where Trump is really comfortable. I think that's kind of where most of your older people's heads are at anyway. But I think in this case, like you're really feeling the limits here because there isn't like a Soviet Union with a blue water navy that you can talk about. Like you just have to be like. And I think these are North Korean drones from one of the North Korean battleships. It's in the Atlantic Ocean, but in international waters. Everybody knows about this. I'm not going to waste your time
David,
elaborating. Like, yeah.
We could get to the bottom of it if, according to Congressman Chris Smith, it says here, a New Jersey lawmaker wants a drone, and he wants one now. Republican Congressman Chris Smith is demanding the Pentagon shoot down one of the nearly 1,000 drones that have been spotted above the Garden State since November 19th, so answers can be had. Why can't we bag at least one drone and get to the bottom of this? There is a limit in drone season on how many drones you can bag.
Yeah.
And just please make sure you bag male drones and not any of the females who could potentially be creating new drones. Let's pay it forward to the next generation.
But in some areas where drones are proliferating problematically in some areas, it's actually better to do it because it makes it harder for you to get your satellite uplinks.
I don't respect people who have those like fully furnished drone hunting like it's basically like a cabin.
Yeah.
I mean it's not very sporting in my opinion.
When I was going out with my dad as a young man, those are some of the coldest hours I ever spent squatting in a swamp waiting to see a drone the size of an industrial refrigerator hovering over me for no obvious reason, and then firing a shotgun at it. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about being uncomfortable, being impatient.
Yeah, that is the other thing is like, okay, if Iran has like one Ace Combat 7 super weapon, they're using it just to go like, I'm not touching you.
Yeah.
Because like, what military value is there? For South Jersey, the South Jersey, Philadelphia area.
Yeah, I like the idea of them hovering over the Wildwood Boardwalk, watching someone lose $20 trying to make one basketball shot so he can win a plush toy.
They're like doing YouTube style surveillance of like tax stampless cigarette trafficking.
Right? Just hovering over a place, being like, they have sold so many cheesesteaks. That can't be healthy. No one in this community should be eating like that.
Reporting to the IRGC. Okay, we have 70,000 hours of surveillance footage of casino security guards who are trying to start a rap career.
Yeah, the bit of it that I've enjoyed just as an observer too is that this is all being driven beyond the fact that like elected officials all have to weigh in. Chuck Schumer said today that he wanted to we got to get our anti-drone drones in the air to defeat the drones that are there. So it's like this is like a bipartisan thing now. But it's all based on like the worst photographs that an old person has ever taken.
Yeah, so many. Every photo that I've seen that isn't just like blurry beyond belief is just like it's an obvious like 737.
Yeah, and it's sort of like that's like Darren Ravel, one of my favorite reporters.
Oh hell yeah,
baseball business sociopath had one where he was basically put one up there. And he's like, that looks a little big for a drone, right? And the community note on Twitter is just the word airplane.
not to have Jersey or Darren Ravel be outdone. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan posted videos of what he claimed were drones, and he was like, we need to get to the bottom of this. This is unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
And then he got community noted, and the New York Post pointed this out as well, that sort of eagle-eyed observers of Governor Larry Hogan's nightly videos pointed out that the lights that he was pointing to was, in fact, the constellation Orion.
Right.
Now, and I just I don't know what's going on here because I feel like this is a mix of as you pointed out, David, like the kind of quiet and boredom of the suburbs mixed with like a return to like a pre-modern mentality of like when you see lights in the sky, they're strange and disturbing.
Yeah,
and like sometimes they go away, sometimes they come back. But what are they? What's going on here?
What is going on here?
This is like, it's creeping Naomi Wolfism, I think.
Yeah.
But this is like basically like that's where the mind is trending now. Is basically people getting not just like sort of the world is confusing. Like I can't like fault somebody for seeing, and I have friends that live in like, the drone belt. I talked to one of them yesterday and he's like, something is making my dog bark a lot. I don't know what it is. Like, it's not like, I don't think it's from Iran. I don't think it's from, space. But like something is making this little guy freak out. And the leap, like the bit that you have to like, this is like the Naomi Wolf commitment that like I think a lot of people are getting into this mindset is like seeing that, observing it, feeling that little bit of unease, and then just being like, this is 5G. Or like, I think they got vaccinated guys on those things or whatever. Just like leaping into whatever mania floats your boat.
To the people who have like, their dogs are freaking out, I have noticed since Biden got inaugurated, dogs are worse behaved than ever.
And that comes from the top, honestly.
Yeah.
That is one of those things that the president sets a tone, and then dogs see it, and they know that they can get away with stuff.
Every place I've lived in since the Brandon Reich began, I've heard more barking dogs in idle moments than I ever have at any other part in my life. And I think like people were saying Biden needed a Sister Soldier moment. It was to kill Commander and Champ. Because other dogs like see what they're getting away with and they're behaving worse.
Yeah. This is, I think also you can follow your own course in your life. It's yours to live. I think that you could start with that observation and completely destroy your sanity in about 36 hours if you wanted to. Start with, I'm hearing more dogs barking, and then like by the end of this week, you can be too crazy for anyone to make eye contact with. Like that's the gift that we've been given in terms of like not just social media, but then also like these other sort of amplifying factors. Like I don't even know where, I'm assuming this is a lot of Nextdoor driven stuff or like Facebook. I don't know where older people or suburban people are going to get more insane now.
Outside, and they're looking at,
the
sky at the night.
This is it. We told them to touch grass, and it got worse than anyone could have expected.
But like, I mean, like there is a question of just like, what is going on here? I mean, what are people seeing? I mean, like it could be the constellation Orion, or it could be a swamp gas interacting with the planet Venus. But like, I don't know. Like, I mean, like there's sort of like the need to like have an exciting narrative, but like, I don't know, like the fixation on drones or the idea like that there are thousands of drones, like sort of loitering over New Jersey could be the case, but like they're not hurting anyone.
Right.
And I can't help but think that like this is sort of like a displaced guilt over the hundreds of thousands of people that this country has killed with drones. And like we like the idea that like, oh, what if that happened to us? Like the Independence Day thing of just like, oh, what if there was a superpower bigger than America that destroyed our cities?
Dropped a huge bomb on one of our important buildings. Can you even imagine? Yeah. I think there's something to that. I didn't want to get too deep into it in the blog, especially because like, I mean, I've lived in noisy places longer than I ever lived in quiet places, but I grew up in old growth suburbs and stuff. I still have like a soft spot for it. You don't necessarily go insane there. You just get kind of bored. But I do think that there's the idea of being like watched by some party, and then this is the new sort of twist is like you get to pick. Like a lot of it for a while it was like it's the Russians or it's aliens, and now it's just kind of like whatever, man. Anyone can have a drone. Do you want it to be MS-13? That's fine. Do you want it to be like family court officers? Also fine. Like just pick whatever it is that's going to help you feel engaged and insane in the way that like adds a little bit of meaning to your day.
Now, like, a couple weeks on now from the Luigi-mania and the United Healthcare shooting, I've been fascinated by the kind of full court press that the media is engaged in to kind of remove healthcare and like the profits generated by the health insurance industry from being politicized, and just essentially turning this murder into like a giant morality play about how we've lost our way. And I'd like to begin with probably the best media hit that I saw in this regard was Michael Smirkanish on CNN lamenting the fact that he walked by the site of the murder just the other day and did not see any piles of flowers and teddy bears being left for CEO Brian Thompson. And in fact, the only evidence that the murder took place there that he did discover was a poster that said "Free Luigi." It depicted him as a saint, and he was just like,
no memorial of the kind that often appears spontaneously after a similar tragedy, like when John Lennon was murdered in New York City in 1980. But there was no sign of any makeshift memorial on 54th Street. Instead, a poster was taped outside the Hilton Hotel depicting the suspect as a saint with the words "Free Luigi."
And I guess the thing that struck me about this is that, like, Michael Smerconish, like, he wants to know why didn't people erect makeshift memorials for Brian Thompson like they did for John Lennon? And the thing is, he absolutely knows why. But like I said, this is part of that they're working overtime to make sure that the profits made by the health insurance industry is never politicized. And I was talking to Catherine about this over the weekend. I think she put this quite succinctly. She was like, if you woke up one morning and saw the headline, CEO of Ace Hardware killed outside Manhattan Hotel, I think people, like, the reaction would just be like, oh, like, gee, I wonder why that happened, or that's kind of shocking. But the fact that everyone in America saw the headline, United Healthcare CEO assassinated in broad daylight in Manhattan, and virtually everyone just thought, yeah, I know the reason why that happened.
Yeah, right. They're just sort of like, I'd like to know more about the specifics, but my first response is, fuck yeah, dude. Like, let's go. Yeah. Like,
the idea that, like, any, like, Fortune 500 CEO, much less, like, anyone who makes over, let's say, like, $250,000 a year, that they would be honored by one of those garish, like, teddy bear roadside memorial displays.
Too good to be forgotten.
Driver or something.
Yeah. If like a big ice shard fell on me, that's my favorite death scenario as of late. If I get impaled by a big ice shard and people put up teddy bears, I would haunt all those people. It's very tacky.
Yeah, like, give those to children. I don't want.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm dead. I died hilariously, and I don't need your toys.
Yeah,
also,
giving, like, teddy bears as, like, a marker of death is just, like, it's sort of like the last insult. It's like, we're giving him baby shit because he was into baby stuff.
Presumably he's starting again somewhere, so, like, eventually maybe he'll find these. He's been reincarnated as a slightly worse guy because of what he did in this life. But yeah, I think
like giving someone a Barney themed funeral. It's very demeaning.
Hey, if I die, I want Barney at my funeral. I want all of Barney's friends, like, you know, baby
getting carried out of the church by the Teletubbies.
Be my pallbearers. Well, yeah, you know, hey, if the Sesame Street Muppets, they're looking for work now. So if they want to, like, you know, do gig my funeral, please
do the, like, the Ghanaian pallbearer dances. Yeah. The bit that I had seen this Smerconish thing about being like, why is there no memorial? Just, I saw the headline and was like, that's disgusting. But, like, that happens 1,000 times a day. That's just participating in culture. I hadn't seen that he made the comp between United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson and John Lennon is one of the most deranged. I mean, this whole discourse has had a lot of moments, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff where people actually wrote it down, presumably read over their own copy and missed it. But, like, how do you not fucking hear yourself when you're, like, you know, beloved by millions, polarizing, one of the most popular artists of all time? Okay, that kind of reminds me of this guy I hadn't heard of before who looks like a D3 offensive line coach. And who ran a company that basically existed to make sure that nobody got more health care than they deserved.
Well, David, like, I mean,
woman is the underinsured of the world.
Think about it.
But David, I mean, like, that's part of the pushback. Is I hear these narratives like from health insurance, like, representatives, and they're just like, you know, health insurance companies, we're really like the middle managers of the American healthcare system, and we're really there to protect the public from patients who access care too much,
right? From being able to go to the hospital.
Yeah,
you've ever been there? It sucks.
We're abusing the system by simply using their health insurance more than they should and driving up costs. And Felix and I, we were talking about this over the weekend, but, like, I keep people like they're citing polls, and they're like, actually, 60% of the American public says that they have good health insurance, and it's just like, well, Sure. But then if you told them that they could have, if they lived in Europe, they would have the same health insurance, but not pay for it, they might start to resent the health insurance company they're paying money to. But then other things would be like, this is the idea that this Luigi guy is some sort of folk hero. This is a like, a marginal point of view. And let's not get over our skis on like, celebrating this guy. And they'll point to a poll that says, when the question is asked, should this husband and father of two been shot down like a dog in the streets? Do you support the cold-blooded murder of this human being who was a father and husband? 10% of the country is like yes, and they're like, look, it's nobody thinks that, but it's just like 10% of people,
like 48, 52, where they're like, I need to know more about him, but he sounds like a fucking shithead.
Well, I mean, like the poll question I'd like to be asked is like, well, like obviously. Sure, no one supports murder, and like, this guy's probably going to spend the rest of his life in prison for killing this guy. But the question should be asked, do you believe Brian Thompson and people like him are also murderers? I would love to hear the answer to that question.
Yeah. That's been the bit that's like the most deranging in sort of the coverage of it. Because I think that all of this, and there's been a great deal of it, The Atlantic has had a lot of it, but every newspaper has sort of weighed in to some extent or another on like the worrying coarsening of the culture that this portends. And I think to a certain that not just the murder, but that people sort of responding with like a flurry of LOLs and 0 teddy bears of tribute. that. And I think that there's a sense in which like if you just woke up for the first time today, that would certainly seem like a coarsening of the culture to you. And yet I think that it's just a question of like what kind of violence you are capable of seeing and then like how you're able to countenance it. I think that the idea that it's bad to shoot people in the back on the sidewalk. I don't support that. And yet, I mean, I think that this is the entire binary of this being like good or bad. Like, are you team Luigi or team Brian falls apart as soon as you start considering what the healthcare system does and what it's designed to do. Like, it's not a conversation there. Like, the volume of brutality is so outlandishly on the side of the institution as opposed to the individual that like, I can't really believe that anybody's talking about it as if it's like a 50-50 thing.
Yeah, it's also like no one is going to say on the phone, like, yes, I love this murder. Like, I really thought that we sort of like learned our lessons about polls, but apparently not. Even that like 10% of the American populace that will answer polling phone calls will openly say yes. I mean, the poll question I saw is Luigi a hero? If 10% of those people are saying yes, then, to do the Bill Mitchell methodology, it's probably like 89%.
Yeah, you gotta uncuck that result.
Yeah.
Well, like I mean, like as I said, like mentioned, like in bringing this up, like it feels like but 4 years ago there was a moment in this country where the healthcare industry became politicized, and the idea of Medicare for all, or the idea that like this industry really only exists in America and is like basically marginal or doesn't exist in the rest of the world, which has much better and cheaper like healthcare systems than we do. But like, but as soon as the 2020 primaries were over, like it's been like that issue of healthcare in American society and the role that the health insurance like industry, which is a huge portion of our economy, and like something like 1 out of every $7 spent on healthcare in this country is paid directly to United Healthcare in one way or another. Has been kept invisible. Like it's not politicized. It's not an issue. It's not controversial. And like in light of this assassination now, which is like put it rather violently into the forefront of people's consciousness, and like the media and the people who speak for the health insurance industry in the media are like genuinely shocked to find like they don't know how to metabolize this like outpouring of anger or support for the person who killed this guy. And like so they have to make it into this morality play. And David, you mentioned The Atlantic. These are headlines from The Atlantic that was just from the last 6 days. First one, Luigi-mania has to mean something. The internet is better at telling stories than it is at making sense, by Charlie Warzel. This is how political violence goes mainstream. The United Healthcare shooting marks a new moment of normie extremism, by Ali Breland. Luigi-mania's commonplace, deplorable politics. From his actions and the glee that they have elicited, one learns not that the healthcare system is broken, but that many people are, by Graham Wood.
Indeed. That's a Graham Wood
the last
subhead
one is
right
really
there.
That was a bar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Graham Wood thought that stupid shit was hard.
Yep. You read that sentence and you know that is spelled Graeme. It's a colonial spelling.
But the granddaddy, like the main one from the Atlantic, was by a woman named Adrienne LaFrance for the Atlantic, and the headline is "Decivilization may already be underway." And now, look, I feel like, do I even need to mention the grotesque irony of the Atlantic magazine lecturing people on how we've become desensitized to violence and bloodshed? I mean, do I need to bring up the parallels here of what that magazine's been doing over the last year? I mean, we can just leave it there, but I want to read a little bit from this article. Begins, the line between a normal functioning society and catastrophic decivilization can be crossed with a single act of mayhem. And just like I said, just the introduction of a term like decivilization, of just the pure mystification and an intentional pretend play acting to try not to understand why people are just saying LOL when they think of this guy getting killed, or whether not so much that they're saying LOL to him being killed, but why they're reacting LOL to this outpouring of like, he was a good man he was actually trying to work to get health costs down in this country.
Meaning, like, to improve his margins.
Right, I was going to say,
like
he was trying to get health expenditures down in this country. Like, it's not a goal. Like, you're doing a business thing there.
Well, one of my favorite things I saw was someone said that at the start of the pandemic, the federal government couldn't figure out how to get money to providers in time, and Brian Thompson stepped in and said, "Hey, we can help." And it's like what a hero, keeping the system that's enriched him and everyone before him going. Like, no one talks about, like, J.P. Morgan loaning the government, the equivalent of $100 billion. Like, it was this great philanthropic act.
Yeah. To me, the decivilization thing, I mean, she goes on and explains. It's worth mentioning, too, that this woman is the executive editor of The Atlantic. Like, this isn't one of those things where it's some freelancer grinding out a take for $350 because, like, the dog's got to eat.
No, because they know this is important and they need to get their big guns on the case, like Adrienne LaFrance and Graham Wood. They got to come out and be like, hey,
all the greats.
Hey, like, the problem with our society, it's not all the people that die or go bankrupt because of our fucking evil profit-seeking health insurance industry. It's actually just the crass, unfeeling, violence-soaked. I mean, they might as well be saying. This is like when they blame Marilyn Manson for Columbine.
Also, like, the mark of a freelancer, a freelancer who's just being thrown to the dogs to make some rage bait. There's an interpersonal touch there that isn't here. Like, if a freelancer wrote this, it would be like, signs that your boyfriend may, like, freak out and kill a CEO.
It's always weird. Business Insider has as, like, a big part of their business plan, that model. Like, there's stuff that you pay for that's generally very well reported, but then the rest of it is them taking a 22-year-old and being like, you're going to write a story called I Went to Los Angeles and the Food Sucked. Like, you're gonna want to change your name. Like, and if it's possible, you're going to want to alter your appearance because you will never publish under this name or that face again.
That is the bottom rung of the article economy now is, like, getting a 22-year-old to write an article that's like tips and tricks to returning your foster dog.
But going back to Ms. LaFrance here, she says, in recent days, journalists and other observers have worked to uncover the motivations of the accused killer. And it's like, okay, they've done that. If there's one thing we don't need to argue about, it's his motivations. He has a whole fucking manifesto that the media is also not running.
As manifestos go, it's like basically a long tweet.
He goes, this is a worthy exercise when trying to understand a single shocking event. But when attempting to understand how brutality spreads across society, studying individual ideologies only gets you so far. As violence worsens, it tends to draw in and threaten people of all ideologies. So, I mean, saying a lot
Thank you,
there.
Professor.
Yeah. And once again, it's like
this is also basically like, what if you become CEO of a health insurance company?
And, like, I'm sorry, like I said, the Atlantic magazine has been running PR for, like, an ongoing Holocaust. So, like, I mean, and they're coming up with every excuse for why that's actually okay and not
also,
violence.
I think with a similar mystification involved, too, where it's basically the idea of, like, if this is, again, sort of presented as a binary and, like, Luigi is the termite eating at the foundations of our culture, like, civilization is our current healthcare system in that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in that argument, in the same way that, like, certainly with the coverage of, Israel and Palestine, that a lot of it is basically like the force of like the democracy, the one that is like standing up for the, virtues that we all hold dear in this type of culture, is the one that's like dropping bombs on tents. Like you can't, at some point you have to interrogate the frame that you came in with when it no longer remotely matches the argument that you're keeping on making.
It's kind of the same thing. It's like sort of like, I know to the casual unlettered observer, it seems like the American healthcare system is just about the most expensive, and it profits off misery and death. And I know like for simple people, it would seem like, can't we have something different than that? But it's actually the trade-offs here are quite complicated, and like they do the same thing with they're like, I know it seems bad to shoot doctors, journalists, and children's with quadcopters, but it's a complex issue. It's very complicated, and we shouldn't surrender ourselves to emotion and ideology and rage against the people doing it.
That's the this that is so whatever. Go ahead, Felix. I'm just gonna keep making the same point because I'm still mad about the one thing. Go ahead.
Just like the way that like all of these are, I've seen like a billion articles like this, but the way they talk about like the crime specifically is like Luigi was one of the bad guys from Death Wish. Like he was just like, yeah, let's go out tonight, commit a murder. Yeah. It could be anyone. I don't care.
They killed the giggler.
They had no business doing that. None.
Yeah, I mean, I think the part of it that I think also you have to avoid in this is that his ideology was pretty incoherent beyond hating private health insurance.
Yeah, but incoherent in a way that like most Americans.
Yes, exactly. That. I mean, this sort of thing. And I think that that's also been the other sort of like counter discourse of this that you've seen in New York, is that like this happens right around the time that Daniel Penny is acquitted on all charges for choking a man to death on the subway while people recorded on their phones. And so there's been this attempt to sort of like hold it up in some cases, like literally on the cover of the New York Post, where it's like a picture of a smiling Daniel Penny next to a picture of like the worst picture they can find of Luigi-Mania, which is still just
is better than the best picture that's ever been taken of me.
I know. I was going to say that's just basically like Christian Bale has a booger. Like it's like, sorry, he's still a really good looking guy. But like trying to create that binary is entirely about like whose lives are worth something and what ways of killing are or are not honorable. And I just don't think that any of that holds up to the barest scrutiny in this case.
Well, going for some more drivel from The Atlantic here, it says, we already understand many of the conditions that make a society vulnerable to violence, and we know that those conditions are present today, just as they were in the Gilded Age. Highly visible wealth disparity, declining trust in democratic institutions, a heightened sense of victimhood, intense partisan estrangement based on identity, rapid demographic shift, flourishing conspiracy theories, violent and dehumanizing rhetoric against the other, a sharply divided blah, blah, blah. Then it goes on. One way to understand which direction a society is going, toward or away from chaos, is to study emotional undercurrents and its attitude toward violence broadly. Medieval Europe, for example, was famously brutish. I love that. Medieval Europe, famous for its brutality. Yeah. But I would say the average person in medieval Europe was probably more kind and charitable to their fellow Christian than anyone in America is today.
Right. I mean, it's like other things that medieval Europe was known for was being like incredibly malnourished and everyone dying at the age of 34. Like, I'm not sure that that's entirely applicable in this particular case, but
you have to assess the whole culture and its direction over time. A society's propensity for violence may be ticking up and up and up, even as life continues to feel normal to most people. A drumbeat of attacks by different groups or individuals with different motivations may register as different kinds of problems. But take the broad view that you may find the point at the same diagnosis. Our social bonds are disintegrating. And it's like, gee, it does seem like maybe not like American society domestically is getting more and more violent, but like America as it relates to the rest of the world has been, a steady uptick of violence for the last, 30 years now. Or like probably most of my entire fucking life. Yeah. Like this is how this country relates to the rest of the world is through war and violence. Yeah. And I think that process necessarily like demands a desensitization and numbness from the American public.
Absolutely right. I mean, I think that's the issue with this is, and again, this is the sort of like, are you hearing yourself, Adrian LaFrance thing that I kept thinking and reading it, is that like what you want is brutality, like domestic brutality, but not violence. That like what our healthcare system is brutal. Like it is the sort of thing where like you will lose all of your money and probably your life if you get sick at some point in your life. Like even if you have good insurance, it's going to be as hard as it can possibly be to get what you want from it. And that is by design. That is the business model. It's not the sort of thing where it's not functioning properly. That's how it's designed to function. That's brutal, but it's administrative. It's not the sort of thing that, you know, happens to you while you walk down the sidewalk and kills you instantly. It's something that happens to you over the course of your fucking life every day, and that functions as a threat even when it's not hurting you. The 60% of people that say they like their health insurance. I mean, for me, like, I've never liked my health insurance. I like having it more than I've liked not having it, but that doesn't mean it's good. I don't want to interact with it at all if I can avoid it.
And I think another thing that we sort of alluded to is that, like, due to his, like, you know, slightly, like, I don't know, vaporous politics of Luigi-mania is like the fact that he can't be pigeonholed easily as being a man of the left or right, I think makes like the media's desperation all the more like immediate, because like he can't be siloed off into like he's a lone wolf right-wing terrorist or like, you know, a radical left-wing communist anarchist or something like that. He's just more or less a kind of like, you know, what would otherwise be like a, you know, like well-off, well-educated young man in this country.
Yeah.
Well, I think that like is sort of subtly one of the bigger things that makes people short circuit and write these sort of like nonsense articles where it's like there have been a lot of societies in the world and violence has been in all of them. But you know, it's the fact that like someone who had something to lose did this.
Yeah.
That idea is like fundamentally terrifying to like a Graham Wood or really anyone at The Atlantic or anyone in any of these publications, because like the rationale for every like horrible thing that everyone does, whether it's like John Kirby or anyone at any of these publications, is like, well, you know, what am I supposed to do? Just go off the grid? Oh, do you want me to kill myself? I have a mortgage to pay. When someone who was like maybe predestined for a life like that, just like for one reason or another snaps and does something beyond himself, that is a very scary thing to face, because everything else is reinforced to make you not do that. The reason that we have so many homeless people is just as like a cudgel to show people like this, don't fuck up, don't do anything brave, or you will end up falling through the cracks without any safety net. Yeah. Just becoming a permanent pest to everyone.
Becoming like depersoned in the way that like, you know, the Daniel Penny's victim has in this case.
Yeah.
Where it's just basically like, I think that is exactly the thing that sort of like puts off not just like elite discourse people, but Peter Thiel's made some media appearances trying to talk about this, and he's been looking...
Appearances would be putting it mildly.
Yeah, apparitions. He's appeared in the way that like Slimer was in that ballroom in Ghostbusters. Just worryingly greasy, grinding his teeth, blinking his eyes at hummingbird speed. And I think it's just the idea that somebody like...
I like to see him blink both sets of eyelids. You can see that.
He's been leaving puddles in a lot of places.
Yeah, the idea of a full spectral apparition of Peter Thiel showing up on Newsmax to say that we need to have a reasoned dialogue on this, is since that somebody has been perturbed by the wrong type of person getting theirs.
One might say that he had a reasoned dialogue with an ex-boyfriend.
Well, it's interesting, like the right wings, like the attempts on the right to like metabolize Luigi-mania was more or less dead on arrival, because like the first day it happened, they were like, look at these psycho lefties celebrating this murderer, and then like all of their comments were like, yep, me too, I guess I'm a lefty now.
Like under
Fuck
like Ben Shapiro videos where they're like, I love all the things that you say about people of color, but I must respectfully disagree with you on this one, Ben. Like, if you've lost those guys, like...
I think they've been smart enough to just let this one drop and instead like get in on all the joy and glee of celebrating Daniel Penny, who's like, you know, they're a vigilante hero. And it's just like, you know, it shows that like, look, everybody supports murder in some fucking context.
Yeah,
like,
right. Like Daniel Penny was at the Army-Navy game in the fucking presidential box. Like there's certainly a photo of Elon Musk standing slightly too close to him somewhere on the newswire.
But I would like to bring up now attempts from the sort of liberal media to sort of corral public sentiment on this. And I had to turn now to an article in The Root, which is a publication that I pretty much had forgotten existed since 2020. But like, holy shit, they're still around and still putting out absolute fire.
This is the best article I've ever read.
The headline here is Luigi-mania isn't the brilliant thirst trap y'all made him out to be by Madison Gray for The Root.
Damn it, I'm always wrong.
Yeah.
I'll get it right one day.
Yeah. I like reading these blogs, though, because it's how you find out that you're always wrong. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It says here, and then the subhead is, this cat is being heralded as some type of brilliant rogue vigilante, probably because of his looks. Nah, son.
Wait, no?
Yeah,
That's a nah. It's a nah for me, dog.
I thought, like, okay, maybe he isn't the vigilante thirst trap I wanted him to be, but his roguish good looks are at least like something. But apparently, I'm just a big fucking idiot.
Don't I have egg on my face?
It begins, the best line from the Godfather saga is from the second movie in the series. Michael Corleone says, if anything in this life is certain, if history has taught us anything, is that you can kill anyone. Maybe Luigi-mania took this really seriously when he decided to allegedly bust a cap in the back of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on December 4th before disappearing. Some were shocked.
Congratulations to the author of this article. You were the first non-undercover cop to say bust a cap since 1997.
Yeah, you have to imagine that this whole article is being read to Mario Van Peebles in the movie New Jack City.
It says here, some were shocked that a broad daylight killing could take place in Midtown Manhattan, one of the most monitored areas in the country. Others actually cheered the killing of the leader of a company that has gained infamy among regular people seeking reliable insurance. Before Mangione's arrest, when only an unclear photo of him at a New York hostel circulated, people were hailing him as some kind of brilliant vigilante who struck a blow against the evil healthcare industry. Others were lusting over him harder than they do Timothy Chalamet. Many believe this mastermind had fled the country for a place with no extradition laws, never to be seen on American soil again. And like, I like the setup of this article is that they're like, yeah, you probably thought he was some rogue, brilliant vigilante mastermind, but like, actually, like, he fucked up because like, would they be praising him if he got away with it? Like, are they just saying, oh, he was stupid to get caught?
Yeah, that's basically what this is. I mean, I think that, and also the idea of it being like, I didn't think that he was like Jason Bourne, but I for sure, like when he wasn't caught instantly, I was like, there's no way the NYPD is doing this stuff. Like they are injecting steroids harder than they ever have, but they're not like gonna find somebody in New York City, especially if he got out in time. Like, but that doesn't mean, I don't know. That wasn't because of his roguish good looks. It's because I'm like familiar with how the cops generally do in cases like this.
Yeah, and also like, okay, let's see you look cooler when you kill a guy. because that was his first time, and when I saw it, I was like, he's done this before, but he hadn't.
Me too.
He was like McLovin having sex for the first time and making that girl come. He did so well. He looked so calm. He like the way that he was like manually rechambering the rounds. He at least practiced a lot, and it's like, okay, I anyone who has ever written an article, I dare you go and kill someone, and I'll review the video. I've seen a lot of videos of people getting shot. And if you can do as well as that, then okay.
David Roth isn't the jowly, hunchbacked, middle-aged man that y'all are making him out to be.
And it's like, I know the NYPD couldn't arrest him, but the fashion police is on the case. I bet y'all thought he probably looked pretty good in that hoodie and face mask. But it says here, now that we know that Mangione actually came from privilege, with his Ivy League engineering and tech intern background, he probably could have written his own ticket. He instead chose to turn away from that path, according to a manifesto he wrote, railing against the healthcare industry. Something which, to be fair, needs railing against.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
That's an awesome to be sure paragraph.
Yeah, to be sure.
We love to have that in there.
As smart as he's supposed to be, Mangione was never really about the criminal life. He says Mangione was never about that criminal life. Yeah. He did dumb shit like remove his face mask in a heavily surveilled area. Apparently, he left a trail of evidence, and even in his perp walk, he wouldn't shut up. A violation of rule number 1 when you get cuffed. And it's like, I don't know who wrote this article, but like, has she been in and out of prison? Like, I mean, I like, What crimes has she committed that like she's gotten away with?
Yeah, like would he be cooler if it was like, oh, he did 5 murders that we actually never found out about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
Would it be cool if he did it for money?
Yeah, like
Or
it's
like,
bad
yeah,
to do all those murders, but you would at least be about that life. You would remove that criticism from the blog. This feels like, I mean, like there's obviously levels of being too online or mediated and writing about things that are, you know, untold and unfathomable. I think even probably in the rest of this story, we're going to get to some of them, but this is like watching like The Bourne Identity and like critiquing the choices that you make during your rooftop chase in Marrakesh. Where you're like, oh, this guy's never been in a fucking souk before, and it shows.
I mean, the way he crushed that guy's windpipe with a book, like the book was the paperback. It used to be used the hardcover. But then the final graph I want to read here, it says, folks, especially white women, are standing Mangione because he's young and handsome. And I guess pretty privilege also applies when you take a mugshot. It makes me think of when serial killer Ted Bundy became a thirst trap for white women. One of it even went so far as marrying him and having his kid while he was on death row. The medical term for it is hybristophilia, and it's basically an attraction to really, really bad boys. And it's, once again, it's just like trying to make it seem like, well, maybe the reason, like, well, A, like, he's not a serial killer, but B, like, maybe the reason he started talking about it immediately after getting arrested is that, like, he wasn't just trying to do a murder and get away with it. Maybe, like, you know, like he was doing this for reasons larger than himself. I mean, whether you agree with it or not, you should at least have to, like, I don't know, when you're categorizing the type of crime he did and assessing its success or not, I think it should be at least part of the conversation.
Yeah, this is the part with all of this. You can try to write about political violence without acknowledging any of the political aspects of it. And of course, like then it does come down to the guy's jawline, but like you're leaving out 90% of what happened.
To quote my sister, after she saw this article, do white women really deserve to be called folks after doing that with Ted Bundy? it's just, like the categorization of people. White women are folks. Ted Bundy is a very bad boy. Ted Bundy could, you know, he is the son of at least one folks if his mom was white.
Yeah, this is. Well, whatever. Finish the poem. I'm sure there's some... there has to be a conclusion, right? Why else would you write a blog if you didn't have a reason to write it?
She connects, like, the Ted Bundy thing to Donald Trump. Like, she goes, well, that's a whole... Like, it also reminds me of how white women are voting for an abuser. But that's a whole other blog.
No, it says,
and I was like,
but it says,
always leave them wanting more.
It shouldn't come as a surprise because some of the same white women last month voted for a man who thinks their bodies are government property. But that's a whole other discussion. Mangione is trying to fight extradition to New York, where he'll be arraigned and likely formally charged. He'll probably wind up in Rikers Island, where, trust me, all that standing by the public won't protect bruh. Oh, okay, so just like a sly joke about being raped to death in prison there. Yeah, so just, you know, that's you know, hey, that's part of that life, I suppose. But
I've seen multiple people do that. Like Jesse Waters also did that, where it's like, oh, we'll see how handsome he is in prison. Where the Aryan Brotherhood, the Sereños, Norteños, and Black Gorilla Family will all unite to get revenge for Brian Thompson.
Yeah, I was gonna say
their hero.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the bit of it where you can't, like, when the discourse gets this dumb, even leaving the root part of it aside, that like if Fox News is basically like who's hotter, Daniel Penny or Luigi Mangione, you have to pick the hotter guy. Otherwise, you're stuck doing that, like, which is you sound stupid and also mostly you sound weird.
Yeah, and like, you know, so like, and then to be sure, I don't think anyone should be raped to death in prison, but bruh's in for a rude awakening right on the sixth borough.
Bad news for you, bruh.
Yeah,
I just got my dear bruh letter. I'm gonna be raped.
I was gonna say, when he gets sentenced, that's the bruh moment. Technically, that is what the legal system refers to it as.
talk with David about because Semaphore has a piece out where a headline is Kamala Harris's digital chief on Democrats losing hold of culture. This is by Max Tanney for Semaphore. And basically, like, I don't need to read too much into it, but basically they were like, the Kamala campaign made like huge overtures to try to get Kamala on the podcasts and like TV shows of sports figures. And the article is about how they all turned her down because they, quote, didn't want to do politics. But the thing is, a lot of athletes did do politics in terms of loudly supporting Donald Trump.
Yes.
But like, it was just basically like, I just want to read here. It says, sports and culture have sort of merged together. And does sports and culture become more publicly and sort of natively associated with this Trump conservative set of values? It got more complicated for athletes to come out in favor of us, Flaherty told me in an interview last week. It got more complicated for sports personalities to take us on their shows because they didn't want to do politics. That's not to say Steph Curry and Steve Kerr and LeBron James and all them coming out wasn't impactful or important, he said. It was more impactful because it had gotten so much harder. But certainly the culture has been associated with heavy sports watching, has become associated with right-wing culture in a way that makes it harder for us to reach people. So I guess I was just wondering, David, like, if you were advising the Kamala Harris campaign, what sports figures, podcasts or TV shows would you have tried to get her on?
The one that I didn't do like a control F in there, but when I was reading through this story, I was like, they better mention Colin Cowherd. And he's in there. Like, I didn't think they were going to get to it, but pow, a second encore. There he is. Her being interviewed by a guy who like has a 66 IQ and has been on TV, just getting pointier and pointier facially for many years. So he used to have a set where it was basically he was on this enormous elevated desk, and then whoever he was talking to would basically be speaking to him from the half floor on Being John Malkovich below, like shouting up. They're like, "Good point, Colin. I think that would be great." I think that that's a really good way to project a presidential aspect, is to go on there and talk to Pat McAfee and the heaving, silent AJ Hawk for 6 hours.
Well, I was gonna say like. I was going to say McAfee, and I know he's sort of, I guess, tangentially associated with the cultural right. He's sort of like the, I don't know, the antidote to the liberal politics of Get Up and First Take.
I was going to say,
but when they have Aaron Rodgers comes on every week and they pay him $1 million to come on and just be like, they're like, oh, Aaron, I keep hearing news reports that you're bad in the locker room, but you beat the Tennessee Titans by a field goal, and
Rodgers just lying flat on his back with his eyes closed, being like, no,
yeah. No, but he's just dead eyed, and then just using it as a platform to just have these absolute sycophants just butter him up. I mean, Kamala needs something like that, but they should just pay Pat McAfee $1 million a week to have her be the Wednesday guest and just be like, "Hi, Pat, did you see the Browns last night?"
Yeah, right. Yeah, you'd be like, "Are you enjoying the Jamesons?" Yeah, I think that this is part of the issue is that it's Kamala Harris, and I just don't know how well she would have done in any of those venues. She did do, and I didn't watch this, she did the podcast that Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson have together, All the Smoke, which is of all the guys to wind up with, it's a popular podcast. I have no idea if it's any good or not, but the idea of two guys that just kept getting suspended for getting in fights during their NBA career being like, "Welcome, Kamala. Today we'd like to talk about your housing policy." The idea of, also it's just some of the policies that she would, if she were to try to do that. I mean, Trump didn't talk about anything but Trump when he went on Theo Vaughn or whatever. He did excitedly listen to Theo Vaughn describe doing cocaine, which was a nice little vintage Trump moment. When, he's actually interested, but it's with Theo Vaughn, it's when you see a dog standing on its hind legs and you're like, "What are you doing, man? What is that?" Anytime but with her, the idea of her trying to explain, the sort of qualified tax credit for first-time home buyers in certain areas to Theo Vaughn would have been thrilling video to me. I just don't know what's the ceiling for that. How well could that possibly have been?
I mean, I know she did Shannon Sharp's podcast. She did Shannon Sharp's show too, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, it's it was like she was totally blanked by athletes, but yeah. And I like that. It was just I'm not saying Steve Kerr's endorsement wasn't a big deal, because it definitely was.
Yep. Right. Well, I mean, it's all. This is the classic thing. There's a great essay that the writer Ian Williams wrote about the class that he teaches. He talked to his students about how they felt about Kamala after the election and all that. And a lot of them who wound up, most of them did vote for her. That's at the University of North Carolina. Were all those celebrities, they were endorsing her. That's nothing to do with me. You think Beyonce cares about what goes on in my life? And I feel that's the same thing with Steph Curry, LeBron James. I admire them. I'm glad that they availed themselves of the opportunity to, not endorse Donald Trump or whatever. But like, whose opinion is that supposed to move? This still feels like a very like national Democrat brain approach to all of this. It's like simply if you go on all the podcasts, like you still have to go there and like be in a room with Joe Rogan for 3 hours.
Well,
like that's
and
who you
also,
show
like,
the commitment.
And also, if you're trying to do this outreach to like the sports media, like, I mean, look, like when Timothée Chalamet went on College Game Day, everyone was like, "What a joke!" Myself included. I was like, "He grew up in Manhattan. He can't possibly know about college football."
Yeah.
But then he actually knew ball.
Yep.
Kamala doesn't know ball. He doesn't know shit about anything.
That is the understated thing in all of this is like it doesn't matter what podcast you put her on. If you put her on like the Pat McAfee show, if you put her on Hot Ones, if you put her on fucking, if you brought back Mom's Basement with Keemstar and FaZe Banks, it would be the same thing every time, which is like a sort of bullshit like folksy anecdote where it's like, my mom always bought Ruffles chips. And then they would ask her like a policy question and she would go, we think that good ideas are something that can happen to everyone. And it's the same, you're giving the same thing everywhere you go. Yeah. It doesn't matter the vessel you're pouring it into if it's the same shit.
Right. And that's like the classic Democrat misapprehension there. Is like the problem is not your strategy, and it's not that you're not employing the right consultants or paying the consultants that you pay too much. It's not a very good product. Like, and people don't believe in it. So to the extent that, you know, not to say that I think you could prop all kinds of things up in front of Theo Von and get him to smile. I think that's his charm. But I also don't like think that this is the area where you need to be examining doing better. Like if anybody running that particular gambit against somebody who's, I mean, obviously it's a whole other suite of derangements in terms of what people talk themselves into vis-a-vis Donald Trump. It's still like you have to offer people a counterpoint. It doesn't matter where you do it. If you're just showing up and not doing it, then it's more or less the same thing as not showing up.
Yeah, it's the same thing that they're going through with, like, you know, I guess none of Biden's policies are popular. He can't fucking communicate. Yeah. And Kamala can't communicate either, but for an entirely different reason, which is that she doesn't, when you ask her a question about fucking Israel or anything for that matter, she doesn't know what she actually thinks. Yeah. We talked about it before, how like all successful politicians in America have like patter, right? Like when Donald Trump has nowhere to go, it's like jobs, the wall will be respected again, etc. Even Biden in 2020 had like, you know, you won't have to watch the news. What did Kamala have that was like that? Yeah. That was like an identifiable theme that she could fall back on. She couldn't even explain like why she was doing the things that she was doing.
Yeah, I think that's a combination of like where you've got a bad product, which is basically she wasn't allowed to deviate from the unpopular policies of an unpopular administration. And then also either overcoaching, I think in a lot of ways, because she did have that kind of like Teddy Ruxpin aspect of just basically like just saying a line when you're done talking. But there's also like, there's a reason why like NFL coaches script the first 15 plays of a game or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like you want to put the people in a chance, like in a position to succeed, let them get confident, and then like let them make plays if you got to do it. Like in this case, it's the scripted plays are unpopular, and also they've been like drilled down, and then like those 15 plays just reset when you get to the 15th. Like there's not like a strategy or any capacity to like trust anyone to do better.
Like sports was talked about in this article as an example of one of like the last bastions of American monoculture. And now to close out the show, I'd like to talk about another, perhaps less heralded, but still example of American monoculture that still exists. I am, of course, talking about pornography. And it's that time of year, folks. It's that most wonderful time of year. It's the PornHub 2024 Year in Review is out. I mean, you know, we've talked about skepticism about polling, folks. These are the only poll results that tell the truth about America. Because, like, you know, if you call someone on the phone and ask them what they believe about something, it's like their response will be filtered through like a number of different guises or poses, or like it's just hard to get what people really believe in. However, the things that people search for when they're dying to work one out.
Yeah.
You cannot lie about that.
Yeah, when
you cannot lie.
Of trying to appear respectable to a pollster versus breathing like Tony Soprano while mashing search terms into a box on Pornhub.
And like I want to talk about two of the results here, and like the best one is always United States top relative searches, and now this is terms searched more often in each state when compared to all the other states.
Oh, I thought you meant like stepsister when you said that.
Well, yeah, I mean like these are the terms, but like this is like by state. The results of like what was the result in that state that like differentiated it from every other state when compared to search terms, and I'd like to begin straight here in my home state of New York with one of the most baffling, or perhaps not so baffling, pornography search terms. For the state of New York, that term was Turkish. Now, I think maybe that basically the IP address of Gracie Mansion is throwing off.
I was going to say, the
results
first
for the
stop is
rest of
always
the
Istanbul.
And then also, David, for the state of New Jersey, it's Iranian. And I'm thinking, like, is this drone related again? Like, what's going on here?
That is like this is the way that kids use like Chat GPT, like Google. The idea of just being like any search box. I want to know what type of drone this is, and then getting something back where it's like, it turns out the drone was like a stepmother stuck in a washing machine. I guess I don't know.
Well, if you remember, one of the most popular search terms for porn in Iran was hotel businessman.
yeah. Well, actually,
so maybe this is like it's like a roundabout way of getting there.
Hotel businessman. This isn't related. For the state of Iowa, their unique search term was work trip.
Awesome, amazing.
It's like fantasizing about having a job,
like traveling out of state. Like, and presumably they're paying for this hotel, but only unfortunately they did double book you with your coworker.
And look, obviously, like I like the states that have like really depraved search results. Like for instance, Minnesota, futa hentai, Missouri, grandma. I mean, just go to jail immediately.
Yeah.
Just do not pass go. Maine, Harry Bush, and then Alaska, anal dildo. I mean, like but that's what you expect. But I have an extra special appreciation for states that have just the most generic. Like search terms, like God bless the state of Pennsylvania for their most search term, naked woman.
Fantastic. Does what it says on the package. I thought you were going to say porn, that they like showed up in Pornhub and they're like, let's see what you got.
The state of Maryland, girlfriend. And the state of Rhode Island,
that's adorable.
Wedding.
That's adorable.
yeah. It's like they're climbing the ladder. It goes from girlfriend to naked women to wedding.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then finally to work trip. And then like maybe if you live long enough, grandma.
I like work trip is my favorite because it's not even like it's just they're dreaming of being able to leave Iowa.
Yeah.
Even if just for like a week.
Yeah, basically that search is more or less hotel interiors.
Yeah.
I hope that there's somewhere it's like is Utah, is it just like Utah jazz highlights?
I mean, there's like a lot of the states like haven't really distinguished themselves. There are no results for Utah that's like unique enough. But for Felix, for the state of Illinois, the search term was ASMR roleplay.
The state, Minnesota and Illinois, ASMR roleplay and futa hentai, that suggests that old people in those states are still getting their porn from like brown bags.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like mailed to their homes on a VHS tape.
Yeah.
Not
I like the idea
of
of Illinois-specific ASMR. Like it's just the guy with the Chicago accent being like, oh yeah, I like that. Super. That'd be more Minnesota, I guess. But yeah, that's like...
well, not to have the rest of the Midwest be outdone. Michigan amateur wife. I mean, that's nice. That's wholesome.
Amateur wife?
Amateur wife, yeah. State of Wisconsin.
Can you go pro in that?
He's in the transfer portal like until you're 24.
I really don't care about the game as much ever since we started paying wives.
Yeah, it's you can't really. It's like you only really care about the coaches at this point because the wives are just changing teams every year.
Yeah, and it's a really bad effect on the culture. I don't like seeing wives like flexing with their new Bentleys and stuff.
But yeah, not to let the rest of the Midwest be outdone. Wisconsin, P.
Cool.
P. But by far the worst result out of any state in the nation. Connecticut, queef.
Come on, man.
Yeah, just what are you doing? What are you doing, Connecticut? Now, and then the other search like breakdown that I thought was worthy of discussion was they broke down the difference between search terms between Gen Z and boomers. Now, the boomer search terms are just everything you might expect someone to search at a pornography website. They're all just categories of pornography. I mean, like, nothing interesting there. However, the Gen Z search terms were so insane that I did not know what to make of them. Here are like from most search to least search, the Gen Z search terms on Pornhub. Number 1, vertical video. Number
like
2.
You want the experience of watching it on your phone, on your laptop. That's important.
yeah. Vertical video. Number 2,
little
hentai.
cineasts with their aspect ratio issues.
Number 2 is hentai. I suppose that's understandable. Okay, but like then it goes gaming, cosplay, virtual reality, cartoon, and music. And then the last one, SFW, safe for work. And now you mentioned this, like the only way I can like account for this is that like Gen Z, all search bars and websites are just sort of flattened. So like every search bar is just like Google. And I was saying like just further out of the results where the most search terms on Pornhub for Gen Z were history of Ottoman Empire and how can I write this term paper before Friday?
Yep. SFW is really
safe for work. Yeah.
The idea there is that it's like plausible deniability. If you get caught watching it at school, you're like, technically it says this is safe. And I'm working here now at this high school where I am attending.
And the music results, just like I thought it was like looking through a kaleidoscope or something. I just don't know what's going on with the kids these days.
It's also incredibly general too, where it's just like any kind of music is fine. I don't care if it's like if it's a grandma doing it, if it's somebody with a Chicago accent doing it, whatever. I'm just trying to hear something. I'm trying to feel alive.
Well, there you go. That's the true face of America 2024 and the results of what pornography everyone in this country is watching. The true monoculture left in America. That and sports.
The national pastime.
Yeah, this is what we're distracting ourselves with.
Before we let David go, can I ask him one question?
Sure.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, right after Thanksgiving, David, on Blue Sky, you posted a picture of the Mar-a-Lago Thanksgiving, a plate of wet food and corn niblets. With the caption, in the most dispirited voice imaginable, hell yeah, we are so back. And I guess my question is, David, because you in the first Trump term, you were one of the premier chroniclers of the weird and uncanny about it. We, of course, had you on for the legendary Burger Night in tonight. Yeah.
Times.
And I was just wondering, looking forward to another Trump term, do you imagine that it will generate weird, uncanny images and moments at such a rate? Are we in for at least more high Trump weirdness? Or now that Trump has been kind of fully metabolized into our body politic, is it going to feel more normal?
I feel like it already feels more normal. Like it doesn't feel good for that. Like I was not joking about like most dispirited voice imaginable. Like there's just, it feels like there's nothing much left to say. I mean, honestly, like that plate of food did kind of shock me. Like it was, you get to this point where you're sort of just approaching everything to do with him and national politics with 1,000-yard stare. And then like to see a piece of turkey, like just bird meat looking that fucked up. And like I was surprised that I could still
get it up for that.
Yeah, seriously. I was just like, wow, I still hate that. That's great. But I think that this is where like it could go one of two ways, right? Like, cause he's slowing down, he's older, he's going to be doing a little bit less. I think he's going to be spending more time at Mar-a-Lago. And that's where I think the really unsettling stuff kind of tends to come from. That like everything that happens in DC, it's like he's just in the president's house doing Donald Trump stuff. So it's all, it can only get so weird. But once you get him someplace where there's like a steam table buffet that never stops, that it's just been going continuously since 1995. Like they swap out the roast when it starts getting
the water and the steam. Yeah. The steam has been billowing for 25 straight years.
And all those people, like just basically like the real life people from the Black Hole Sun video, like the people that inspired that vision are just there all the time waiting to like eat near him. There's still stuff. I still remember we talked about it. I think it might have been the Burger Night app, but we've talked about Trump food on here a few times. There was a picture of a lobster that looked as if the shell had been opened and then just like filled with sand. Like there's still they've got new moves, like that we don't know about yet. And so I don't want to say that they've covered everything. Like there's all kinds of stuff. Like we've never really seen a Trump dessert, for instance.
So, we have David. We have such sights to show you.
I was just gonna say,
for years.
Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see, and that sounds great. We're gonna bring the event horizon back.
Coming soon to the Mar-a-Lago steam table. Garmonbozia, all your pain and suffering. Creamed corn. Yes. Garmonbozia. It's what's on the menu for America.
Dinner.
It's what's for dinner. We'll leave it there. We'll be talking backwards in the Black Lodge for probably the next 4 years. But let's leave it there. If you want more David Roth, you know where to get him. Defector. We'll have the links in the episode description, and check out his article on the drones over New Jersey, or just planes, birds, constellations, the moon, the sun, the sky. There's weird things happening everywhere. David Roth, always a joy to talk to you. That does it for us today. Chris, do we have any more plugs at the end? Oh yeah, check out Felix's miniseries, Searching for a Friend at the End of the World.
New episodes exclusive for patrons on Wednesdays. And I think we are extending our sale on the Chapo Traphouse.shop, and basically I think until everything's sold out, but we're running low on product. So if you want to get discounted hats and shirts, the BCCI hat, the Zapata hat, now is the time, because we are selling out the product, and then we'll reload some stuff a little later into the new year.